Well, good Halloween morning, everyone. And, Halloween can be one of those really scary days. And yet, when you compare it to having money challenges in your business, it's more like child's play. So, we're going to have a conversation this week about scary situations in your business and maybe in other situations in your life. Today, we're going to discuss the money challenges and more on episode 699 of today's Antidote.
Stay tuned for today's Antidote, brought to you by the Renegade Success Network. Today's Antidote features a healthy dose of thought-provoking insights and information for business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, and nonprofit professionals. Each day since March of 2020, this program has offered that one thing to help you continue on your own unique pathway to success. And now, Renegades, we bring you Bob Graham and Tom Brush.
Hey, Tom. Good morning. How are you?
I am very well, thanks. How are you doing today, Bob?
Good. That was a spooktacular opening.
Thanks. I like that you're in the spirit of Halloween.
I am.
Do you think you're in a new location, right? The hidden bunker is now in a different place.
Yes.
What do you think Halloween is going to be like for you today?
Zero. Nothing.
Zero.
It won't even. Yeah. No. There will be no such thing at the new bunker.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Which is sad. I come from a place where I used to live. There were some kids next door, and we would have Halloween. They go out around, and then they come back to our house for bonfire, hot dogs, soup, and s'mores. And that was our Halloween, and it was fun. And well, those days are gone. Time to move on.
Time for something different.
That's it. I think tonight it might be the baseball game.
Got it. Makes sense. All right. So since it's Halloween, Bob and I thought that this would be a good week to talk about scary situations. And of course, we're going to try to focus it on your business. And yet there are many other scary situations that impact your business, not necessarily about your business. And so as we go through this conversation today around the money challenges people face, we know that there will be some thoughts and ideas that will be running through your head as we have this conversation. So we would encourage you to share your thoughts and ideas on this episode of today's Antidote, episode 699.
Whoa.
Can you believe
that's crazy.
It's fascinating that November 1st will be the 700th episode.
It's fascinating to me that we still do this, because when we started, we were I think we were both thinking like 2 weeks, maybe 3.
Yeah. I don't know. I think given the situation, I thought it would last a little bit longer than that. I'm not sure I ever imagined 699 episodes.
I was surprised I talked you into it, to be honest. I don't think I've ever said that, but I thought it was really out there, and I didn't expect you to take the leap.
I like social media. I like being out and sharing our value. That's what I like. So we would encourage you, as we have our conversation today, to share your own value. Whether you are following us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, or
LinkedIn Live, baby, Halloween time.
LinkedIn Live, Halloween time. We added that to a special Halloween time for this day.
You do your special stuff. I do my special stuff.
Fair enough. So we encourage you to share that, because we know that it'll add value to our show. Might even put it up on the broadcast for those who happen to be watching it to see. And we will make it a part of our show if you're listening to the podcast. In addition, at the end of the conversation, Bob and I will each offer our one thing, our today's antidote, that thing that we hope will help you figure out how to take your next step, maybe today or maybe somewhere down the road when you are stuck and overwhelmed and trying to figure out how to move forward or move at all.
Through a tricky situation. See what I did there? Yeah, keep going.
Okay. And of course, if you have a one thing to share, please feel free to do it, because we know that when you add your value, it'll benefit others and help them figure out how to take their next step along their own unique pathway to success. That's what we're trying to accomplish. So before we start our conversation, though, we always start out with celebrations. So, Bob, what are you celebrating today?
I'm going to go a little crazy today. It's National Knock Knock Joke Day.
On Halloween?
On Halloween, I know, it's crazy.
That's fascinating. Do you go to the door and say knock knock instead of and
I don't
maybe
know,
what?
but I've got 3 business ones for you. You ready? Knock knock.
Who's there?
Good job. Nana.
Nana who?
Nana, your business. I think it's supposed to be none of your business. I don't like that one. All right, 2 more. Knock knock.
Who's there?
Needle.
Did you say needle?
I said needle, yes.
Needle who?
I needle money to pay down my debts. See, that fits today's. But now the third one. I like the third one. Knock knock.
You could have led with this one. Who's there?
Opportunity.
Opportunity who?
Don't be so. Wait, who's it? Don't be silly. Opportunity doesn't knock twice. These come from Jokes for Us.
Did you preview these before you
I did.
made the decision to add them to the show? So when kids come to your house and they knock, they knock on the door. How many people will say who's there?
Very few, because it's Halloween. You would expect if kids are knocking on your door, you're going to open the door and give them, candy. Or you could be like the woman in my neighborhood when I was growing up. She'd give you a little apple, or another neighbor would give you a little Dunkin' Munchkin. Just like you put your hand out and she'd give you like a little chocolate munchkin. Like, okay, what am I doing with this? And you just eat it.
This was clearly before the conversations around don't hand out things that aren't wrapped.
Oh, we're talking early.
You weren't worried about razor blades or any of those other crazy things
No,
that there were
no.
conversations about?
No. Which, a beautiful time in our world, right?
Yes, although there were lots of concerns about
There were
things
there
like
were.
that.
Yeah. So
Interesting. Okay.
what are you celebrating today, Tom, besides National Knock Knock Joke Day?
I'm celebrating a wonderful weekend in the Great Smoky Mountains with my wife.
Okay.
We were out there for 4 days.
Tennessee, right?
Yes, Gatlinburg, Tennessee.
Gatlinburg, Tennessee.
We were also in Pigeon Forge for a little bit.
Pigeon Forge, no. Home of Dollywood.
Home of Dollywood. The colors were amazing. I posted on Facebook.
I saw that
picture. So one of the things that some officials, we were out there for a lacrosse tournament and to have some time away officiating. And so some officials will post beautiful pictures of where they are that day. And usually it'll say my office view for the day. And
yes.
The field seemed like it was right across the street from this mountain. And the mountain was amazing. And just the colors. They even told us they were a little past prime season, maybe a week or so. And still the colors were absolutely amazing. And it was the first day was crystal clear blue sky. It was quite the sight. So That was my celebration of the enjoyment.
And you had that lovely drive home last night.
We had the drive home that was made much more enjoyable by a Buffalo Bills win last night. So that helped the drive go along a little bit quicker. And we had an audiobook we were listening to. And then Liz was, of course, because we had stopped at Dollywood, and Liz, one of Liz's favorite people is Dolly Parton. And there's so much I think people don't know about her. And someone did a podcast. Mm-hmm. There's a 9-episode podcast around Dolly Parton. And we listened to, I think, 4 episodes of it, or 5. It was fascinating to learn.
What was the audiobook? I'm curious.
Well, it was a podcast. Oh, the audiobook we were listening to?
Yes.
It was appropriately about a guy who
50 Shades of Grey.
No.
No.
What's wrong with you?
So many things.
It was a guy who wrote about his journey along the Appalachian Trail.
Oh, okay.
Nice. Which at time it's actually a fascinating book, especially if you're interested in like all the things that could be about the trail. Mm-hmm. He talks about the Park Service in the country and some of the challenges there. He talks about nature and all the different animals and species and the interactions that travelers have, He talks about the communities that he goes through and the travelers that he meets, and
Oh,
and
wow.
then talks about, and goes into some depth. And sometimes it gets a little, like, if you're not a geologist,
Yeah.
some of his
Kathy?
conversations about the rocks and all that, you might want to skip through, similar to like the trees or the animals. And he dives really deep into it. So if you're really into nature, it's a really great, I can't remember the name of it, but I'll find it and I'll put it in the show notes.
Okay. Okay.
It was just fascinating to learn about this guy who was not just out of the blue said, I think I want to hike the Appalachian Trail. Quite the decision to make. It's 2,000 miles, over 2,000 miles long.
Tom, we have a comment from someone. I'm not sure who. Hopefully they'll tell us. But we had a happy ride home listening to the Saints game. We listened to the audiobook too, Sins of the Father. So apparently audiobooks and drive time. I guess that means I should make the Renegade Way an audiobook in my spare time.
Probably a good idea. It's an easy, I tell you, it was, and we had a almost 9-hour drive. Not sure that we would make it through the day. We left at about 5
PM.
and actually I drove the whole way and I was fine. I think listening to the books helped. It also helped that I didn't have.
Yeah, I listen to podcasts when I'm driving long distances, and you sort of get into the zone, and yeah.
It also helped I didn't have 6 games on the field to officiate. That was beneficial.
That would help, I bet.
Yes. So anyhow, enough about our celebrations, although you can almost not celebrate enough.
Ooh, interesting
Always a
theory.
good thing. And so let's dive into our conversation. Scary situations for this Halloween day. We're going to talk about money challenges a little bit. Do you want to kick us off, Bob?
Tom, I found who that comment was from. That was from Gene Bourne of Born to Travel. There you go. So just doing my homework, making sure I get credit where credit is due.
Fair enough.
Gene, who has that New Orleans tie and likes the Saints for some reason. I don't know. So scary money situations. Scariest would be not having enough of it. Second scariest would be, I'm going through this right now. I deposited a check in my bank and the bank says it never received the check. So we have a amount of money that's in flux. So that's kind of fun. And then I think, scary money situations also can be the first year I ran the business, I didn't put money away for taxes. And suddenly it was, oh, you owe all this money for taxes, and I didn't have the money. So I worked for, I'd say February through April, all my money was going to pay for taxes that year. So those are my scary money situations, all of which I've experienced.
Well, it's interesting, I think that it's, one of the titles we had for today was being short on money, right? I think was one of them. I also thought as I was sort of finalizing it, that you could also do too much money. Some people might say that's, I know that everybody says that's a challenge they'd love to have. And yet I imagine there are some people who are feel like they're in that situation and there are other challenges that it creates.
Yeah,
and
I'd like to be there.
You'd like to have that challenge?
Yeah, I'd like to try that for a day or two. That would be a preference of mine right now.
As some people say, be careful what you wish for. You never understand the other. You never understand all the parts of the situation that you're actually in it.
Yes, fair enough.
And I think that I think what it gets down to, and I don't I don't want to start this week with this thought, but it's a little bit about scarcity.
Mm-hmm.
And I would imagine that scary and scarcity there's a reason that they are, they start a little bit the same and are very similar words, is that it's a concern that there's never going to be enough or that you're in that space. And I think that it's a very real, there's no doubt money's a real challenge. And I think it holds a lot of people back from trying to do the things they really want to do. Because they're concerned about, well, what happens if I don't have any more or don't have enough? And, always comes back to, anytime I'm thinking about not having enough, is enough for what or enough for whom? And so much of it seems to be around mindset. and yet it's a very real situation. So you have this sort of like dichotomy
Dichotomy?
of,
Yeah.
yeah, of like the reality of here it is. And I would really love to have the mindset, and not a scarcity mindset, where there's going to be plenty of it. And yet that's not the situation that people are find themselves in the moment. And so I think that balancing act of the reality and trying to and understand the mental side of it really can get a lot of people stuck and frustrated and overwhelmed and unsure of what to do next. I think that becomes one of the biggest challenges that people in business face, or people in not even just in business, in our lives face, is trying to figure out when we have a challenge like this. Because I think one of the things we start doing is we going down the path of, okay, well, now it's just a challenge. What happens when it moves on to even more serious pieces, where it's not just a challenge, it's like, okay, now I don't have anything. Now what's going to happen? And I think that's the thoughts that start going through our head of, oh, I'm going to have to give up my business. So I'm going to have to give up my dream. I'm going to have to sell my house. I'm going to have to sell my car. How am I going to put food on the table? All of those thoughts that could start to run through your head.
Or I might lose my job if I'm running a foundation or some sort of nonprofit and we have to generate revenue and we haven't generated it. Or if I'm a team leader of a sales team or a research and development team and we don't accomplish our goals, so we can't bring the money in. I've experienced it in some of those situations as well. And that's even in some ways scarier. Having my own business, if I don't have enough money, it affects me. And it affects my bills and the people around me. That's different than when you're looking around a team of 5 people that have worked their butts off and you don't have the money to support them. That's a stressful situation, way beyond scary. That's just stressful.
Yeah, no doubt that that it is, those around you making payroll and paying other bills. And what is that going to mean? There are no doubt challenges. And yet I would imagine that it's a situation that many, if not maybe most or all, entrepreneurs and small business owners face on a regular basis. Very few times I think do people go in just flush with revenue or with cash to be able to do whatever it is they want to do. There are always the limitations that are put on what are the possibilities, given whatever your sense or sensibility is around the money that you have or you feel like you need.
So can I ask you a question, Tom? Because over the last, I don't know, 7 or 8 years, I know you've dealt with money issues at various times. And I'm not saying that like we all do. Not anything that I can say, oh, I remember when you almost went bankrupt or anything like that. Just real money issues like we all have. You never seem to let it get to you. And with me, you've always said to me, you've always kind of minimized that for me and said, that's not, what are we doing here? What are we trying to accomplish? Can you talk about your mindset and how you get through that? Because I would say that you're a model in this regard for me.
Oh, heavens.
Well,
there's the external and there's
it's
the
scary,
internal.
so I figured I'd say something that would
Sure.
scare you.
No, I think there's the external and the internal piece of it. I think it's one of those that we go through, like anyone else. I mean, I have 3 kids that have gone through college, and trying to figure that out and still trying to figure that out will be an ongoing challenge.
That you've paid some or all of, right?
Some of, yeah.
Okay. Well, you didn't say that. You just said you had 3 kids going through college. I wanted to make sure we were clear
Right.
that.
Yes.
Okay.
And so I think that there are internal things. And I also believe that some of that I can't control. I think the bigger thing for me, so there's this internal, like, yeah, I have these struggles of, okay, I know I have, and I think this happens in small business. I know I have money coming in, just isn't in yet. And yet I have things that have to go out, and trying to balance that is, I think, like anybody, it's worries that goes on. What I think in the last few years I've tried to do is not get caught up in it and deal with it when I have to deal with it, and believe that what I'm doing adds value and that others will find value in it, and that there are a lot of different ways to find the money that you need. I remember when COVID first hit, or a little bit into it, and there weren't a lot of people looking for meeting facilitators, coaching. They were just trying to survive. One of the ways I chose to stay involved was, or just to make some money, was to do
Instacart, right?
Instacart. Yeah. And I sort of enjoyed it. Like, it got me out of the house. I got to be out and about. I felt like I was helping someone. And, the money wasn't huge, and it was enough to say, well, it takes care of this or takes care of that, or, and so I think what I've tried to do is find things that I actually enjoy, and that there's an opportunity to make some. Officiating is kind of that way as well. It's an opportunity that I know you're going to get paid to do. It's something that I enjoy doing. I think it adds value because it allows kids to play the game. And so I guess I've most recently just started to feel like that it's going to come around, that the value I offer, people will see it, and that it'll take advantage. I mean, we had a conversation once. I had a very steady job, like I was a coaching client that was about half time, and it was pretty much taking care of most of my needs financially. And yet it wasn't serving me in the way I thought it could, and I thought it was holding my business back ultimately. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to believe in myself and step away from this opportunity, which I truly felt for a lot of reasons was the right decision, or at least the real decision. And sure enough, out of the blue, a week and a half later, somebody called me and said, hey, I have this thing. I've known you a little bit from some of the different things we've done in the nonprofit space, and I'm looking for someone to do this thing. And it's a short-term project, and I know that it might be something that you might really enjoy and might want to do if you have the time for it. And had I been in the middle of this other opportunity, this half-time coaching position, I wouldn't have been able to say yes to this. And I think saying yes to this was an opportunity to, really continue to share value, and that things would come along. And so I don't know. I guess that's one of those things that I feel like I control some of it, and I can't control all of it. What I can control is how it lets me feel. And so, sure, there have been many times since I have been a working adult, or even when I was a college student, that money was an issue. And yet I've tried not to let that impact who I am, or really let it impact the value that I share to others.
Wow.
That.
Well, I think ultimately what we're really talking about is taking a leap of faith, right? When it comes to money, there's a leap of faith that you said it really well. I felt like I provide value. And so you, rather than going, well, I provide value, but this, you stood behind that value and said, I think in this marketplace, in this world that we're in, that value is going to be recognized. And it was. And I've found in my career, when I look at, when you were saying that, I was going through situations and thinking, when was I at my worst financially? Something's always come up that has gotten me through. There's always been a way. And I know there's someone probably listening to this or watching this and going, these guys have it totally made. It's so easy for them. I'm going to tell you right now, it hasn't always been easy for me. There have been months in the last 6 months where I did not think I was going to be able to pay my bills. And I did some scrambling. And I had one client who was kind enough to pay me 6 months in advance. And that was how I got through 1 month. So if someone's thinking that, you guys are totally talking from the top of the hill, I'm not talking from the top of the hill. I'm talking from in the midst of it right now. Like, I'm just realizing today's the 31st.
Yeah.
I'm going to be right on the razor's edge this month. And in some ways, I would tell you, having been in situations in my life where I made a lot of money, I value money now more than ever. And it's easy when you make a lot of money not to value it as much because it's easy to use. It becomes more disposable. And I think for me, it's been a real lesson, and it's also affected my pricing. I price things differently now because at one point it was sort of a part-time on the side job, and I priced it one way. That was just yeah, sure, pay me that. Now it's like, no, this is my profession. I want to get paid this. And as I've done that more, people have responded more favorably, and they expect more value for it. So that's the other part of money, scary money side, is that whole, how do you charge people? What does that look like? And I think that can really affect how much money we generate as well. How many people have you talked to who you would say are undervaluing their products or services?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a common thread. I think that runs through, because we don't take into account all the things that go into the value that we have to offer.
Right.
And, and I think that in and of itself is much more significant than most people place. And I think one of the things people think about is the time. That's seemingly an easy one to say, well, I'm going to spend this many hours on it.
Right.
And that's all they factor into the equation when they're coming up with what their pricing looks like, and not what is the value that they are providing. And
Right.
all of their knowledge, experience, and perspective that they're sharing with others that don't have it. And there's sometimes significantly more in that than there is in your time. And yet we often don't consider that as something of value.
Or the time it took to get the skills we have, right? Like, I went to college, you went to college. Some of what I bring to my clients started in college, and that bill has to get paid for, and the other training and the other experience. And, the reading, I try to read a business book every weekend. That's got value for my clients. I'll mention a book, and I've never said to a client, hey, by the way, part of why I'm charging you this rate is because, I read a business book every weekend. So rather than just being stale on the way I was 10 years ago, I've read 50 books a year.
Well, and I also think that it's about it's so often not about it is about what we bring to the table, whether it's our product or service, either one. It's also about what is the transformation that the person makes, and how much does that impact what they're willing to pay.
Right.
And if people see a significant transition, they're like, wow, it was really great. You helped me get to a place I never could have gotten. And it's hard to put a price on that. For them, it's easier. For us, for them to say, wow, I would, if you help someone figure out something that they could never figure out on their own, what is the price on that? And, and I think that's why money challenges are such an interesting thing, because it really is about value and how much someone desires what you have to offer, or how much you desire what someone else has to offer. And I think that if you desire it enough, you'll figure out a way to get the money for it.
Well, and you and I are talking through that right now. There's something, we both were on a webinar last week, and there was an amount of money that the person said, hey, you could make this amount of money. And we were texting back and forth. What would you do if you got that money? And you came up with an idea that was you had something to expand the business. I said, oh, that's a good idea. That was a signal to me that we're going to find the money for that, because we see value in that. And I think that's the challenge. And, you and I both do coaching. We both do training. And I think it's difficult for people to see the value because they haven't experienced it yet. And they also struggle with the idea that, if I need a coach, that means I'm not doing my job. I'm not doing the things I should do. And I think that's part of the value is, what does that value look like to a person? I've had that discussion with a number of people. Well, if I pay money for a coach, isn't that me admitting that I failed? But I always like the story of Tiger Woods. After he won the first couple of tournaments way back when, that next season, he literally he took his swing and got a coach, and they rebuilt his whole swing with the intent that he was going to play for 20 years.
I mean, my thought is that when you hire a coach or someone who can help you, that means you're starting to be serious about what you're doing.
And that's what I would say. But sometimes that being serious about it can scare people.
Of course. I'm sure we'll talk about that as one of the topics as we go.
I have a hunch we will.
So Bob, as we
go ahead, I'm ready.
I think I started first. So
no,
why don't you share your antidote, your one thing for today?
My one thing for today around scary situations and money challenges is I like what you said about the idea of our value in the marketplace. And if we believe in ourselves and believe in our value, I think that resolves things more than anything else, more than worrying about it, more than complaining about it, more than, doing nothing because, it's October 31st and I haven't made any money this month and it's a really bad month. So rather than work at it, I'm going to sit and watch TV, or I'm going to lament it. And I think that those are natural inclinations, but I think it's really about believing that we have a value. And I think you say it really well. We all have a value, and it's putting that out there and hoping that people find and recognize it and sharing it widely.
Interesting you say that. I was at this event, and there was a vendor this weekend at this tournament, and he was selling donuts, mini donuts. They were really good.
Oh.
And so, he was a chatty guy as well. And me, when people start chatting, I can start asking questions. So anyhow, he asked me
No,
funny, huh?
No way, get out.
So he asked me, what do I do? We were talking about, he asked where we were from, and because he had to make the donuts in front of us while he was doing it, so they had some time. And so he asked what I did, or he said, this is what he does. He said he's a business consultant. I said, oh, that's interesting. And I think it was me or Liz who said, yeah, that's kind of what Tom does as well. And so he was telling us a little bit about one of his clients and what he did. And he asked about me. And I said, well, I deal a lot with small business owners. And I got started really, and still do, a lot of work with nonprofits. He's like, oh, I've never really met anybody who works with nonprofits. And he was like, I talk to a lot of people all the time. And, I would love to add you to my network. I'm not going to be able to really give you a recommendation. And yet you're a name that I could pass along, and they can check out your LinkedIn. And so he sent me a LinkedIn connection, and I'll accept it today and write him back. And you just never know where situations are going to arrive. And I think that's an important part of, we can't tell the future. And so today's challenge could be tomorrow's great opportunity.
Ooh.
Could also be tomorrow. It could be also be tomorrow's obstacle. We can't control that at the moment. And the other thing I think about it, I've got a lot of thoughts around this. One is, I think sometimes you have to take the value that you have and figure out how to leverage it differently. Mm-hmm. When COVID hit, I saw the value I had is I don't mind shopping, and I don't mind being in the car and driving around. And so I saw this opportunity where I could share value with others at a time when people were really scared about going out, and I wasn't as scared. And so I could help them. And in return for that value, they provided some money that was great to have at the time. I didn't get into lacrosse officiating necessarily for the money, although I've seen that the value that I have, that I can provide on the field based on my knowledge, experience, and perspective in it, and in my sort of calmness around assigning games and all the things that come around with working at a tournament, that has value to others. And so I've been able to leverage some of these things to do what I want to do, and realize and believe that there is going to be enough money around that to satisfy whatever it is I desire. Although my number one today's antidote is, I think when we think about money challenges, we only think that there are challenges when you don't have enough. And I think that there are lots of challenges for people who have more than enough money, and they're just different challenges. I think we all face opportunities and obstacles, and just because you have a lot of one resource doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't challenges along the way in other areas of your life. And so for me, that's one of the things for us to remember is that there are lots of challenges around money. You can either spend time focusing on it. Many of those challenges you can't control, or you can figure out, how do I share my value, and figure out where the opportunities arise from that.
I like it. I'm not as scared as I was when we started this episode.
Well, you're going to be scared again tomorrow because we're talking about scary situations all week. So,
yes.
And, who knows? Some kid may show up at your house and you don't have any candy for them. And then what are you going to do?
I have some peppermint patties.
Ooh, one of my favorite.
I didn't know that. I like peppermint patties. So someone got me some and they're in my refrigerator, just sitting there in case
Nice.
I have a need for them. So I could always dispense with them.
Excellent. All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for being with us today. If you have an antidote you'd like to share around money challenges or other scary situations, please feel free to share it in the comments. If you happen to be listening to our podcast, thank you for listening. And we know that there's no opportunity to share there. So please join us in our 2 groups. Whether you're on LinkedIn, you can join us in the Renegade Success Network for Leaders, or if you're a Facebook person, join us in the Ring of Renegades. There you can also share your antidote that might be exactly what someone else in there is looking for. So go in and share your value, and who knows what might come of it. You may actually, like Bob, who shares his value about his cat, and somebody called him.
That did happen.
That wanted to help him. I didn't mean to share your story.
No, that's fine. I'll talk about it. It'll probably be what I celebrate tomorrow.
Awesome. And so
didn't want to miss on National Knock Knock Joke Day.
Knock knock joke. So every kid who's going out there, have a knock knock joke prepared. So when you knock on the door and they want to give you candy, they want you to say trick or treat. Stand there and wait for them to say who's there. So that's just the thing. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for being with us today. We look forward to seeing you inside one of those groups. Maybe they'll show up at our door tonight.
Oh boy.
Or we'll see you tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Eastern time, for our next episode of Today's Antidote. Have a great day, everyone.
Oh, I'm sorry. I totally took a nap there. I was trying to come up with a Halloween knock knock joke. Hey, embrace the renegading you on this lovely Halloween. It's not as scary as you think. Embrace the renegading you.
Absolutely. And go out and make it a safe and enjoyable night. We'll see you soon. Thanks for listening to Today's Antidote, powered by the Renegade Success Network. The Renegade Success Network helps you confidently create your own unique pathway to success. To learn more about the Renegade Success Network and how you can take your next step, follow us on Twitter, connect on LinkedIn, or join the Ring of Renegades Facebook group. For full details on how you can join our community, go to renegadesuccessnetwork.com. Embrace the renegade in you.